Welcome back to the Lawyer Diaries. Today we are talking resumes. So, these are some of our top tips based on all of the resume reviews we've done. A lot of these are based on common mistakes or trends that we see from associates who are looking to lateral. And your resume is really the firm's first impression of you. So it matters a lot. And here are a couple of our top tips.
Number one, include relevant experience. I know this sounds really obvious, like, of course I should include relevant experience, but this may not be as obvious as it seems. And what we mean by include relevant experience is one, if you are a corporate generalist, but you've decided that you want to pursue an M&A focused role, you want your resume to really highlight the M&A experience that you have had rather than the other corporate transactional experience. Now, you do want to add that experience, but your first few bullets should be your M&A experience specifically. Additionally, legal work should make up the bulk of your resume. Now, we know that you guys are all very interesting people with lives outside of the law, and you've done interesting things before going to law school. But when you're lateraling to another law firm, you really want to make sure that the vast majority of your resume stays focused on your legal experience. So if you have experience from, high school where you worked retail, that's the kind of experience that you want to omit and save space so that you can use that space for more relevant and recent legal experience to demonstrate that you're going to be a profitable attorney.
Yeah, and this 70% balance is really key because I think sometimes people are tempted to include more details about organizations or memberships that they have outside of work and their responsibilities there. And that's well and good as long as 70% is still your legal experience. So if you're super junior, you haven't been working for that long, that means you need to bulk up your current firm section with as much detail as you can. That means you need to add 2, 3 bullet points to your summer associate positions. You need to highlight any clinical experience you have where you are actually practicing law. And then you can include, if you have room, more detail about whether you are a board member or a director or whatever of a bar association or some other organization that demonstrates your leadership abilities. But please stick to the 70% rule. Our second piece of advice is to highlight your wins. And this can be not as intuitive for litigators versus corporate attorneys. So, what do I mean by highlight your wins? Instead of just writing, I manage a docket of diverse federal and state cases, commercial litigation cases, you say successfully drafted and argued a motion for summary judgment for a healthcare tech client resulting in a X dollar victory, whatever. Um, that is so much better. And I'm not saying to include it instead of saying, oh, I manage a diverse docket of cases, which means responding and drafting discovery, preparing for depositions, etc. But if you can include that in addition to those kind of broad and general overview of your practice, that's excellent. And it's okay if you're a junior and you don't have a lot of wins or you haven't seen a lot of cases through. It's okay if you can include that. Then it's perfectly fine to give broad overview of the type of clients you have, the type of cases you work, and your role in these cases.
I couldn't agree more. I think that when we see mid level litigators or more senior litigator resumes, the ones that really stand out are the ones where, in addition to including more broad experience, like you stated, Becca, they say something like successfully argued X in court, something along those lines. Um, and I feel like that just adds so much more color to your ability as a litigator. Not only can you do the work, but you've been in a position where you got your client the result that they had hoped for. So it just takes your skills to another level. And it's also such a good talking point during a resume. Like that is unique experience. Not a lot of people know to word their experience in that way. And more likely than not, the person interviewing you might ask you some questions about that specific experience that you've listed.
And I just want to circle back to the first point I made of why this is might be more intuitive for corporate associates. When you're putting together a deal sheet, you are highlighting your deals. You're highlighting every deal you've worked on, and it's easy to pick out the largest ones and either put them on your resume or bring them up in an interview for that reason. But for litigators, we don't do that. So including them and thinking through these big wins as you're drafting your resume is a great way to keep them fresh in your mind and to highlight what your interviewer might not otherwise see.
Exactly. And also, wins look so different in litigation than they do in corporate work. For example, you might be staffed on one huge litigation matter for 3 years, and that's all you do. You can't say, oh, I won 20 cases because you were on one case and it probably settled.
Yeah.
Whereas, whereas your transactional counterparts during those 3 years, they probably can list 20 transactions that they've been a part of. So highlighting your wins and saying, we drafted this motion and it was successful, it was granted. That's a really good way to show how you've added value during your time at your firm. Number 3, include an interest section. I know that this is something that a lot of people debate on and people have strong opinions about an interest section. I feel very strongly that people should have an interest section. Now, I don't think it should take up a lot of space. I think it should be the very last thing on your resume, and it should be no more than one line, and it should include 3 to 5 interests and no more than that. I think that it's such a good conversation starter. Um, you have to go into an interview with the expectation that the busy senior or partner who's about to interview you never even read to the interest section. So don't be offended if they don't bring up any of your interests. But every so often, you will get an interview where the interviewer really cares about whether you're a cultural fit and whether they like you, and it's more of a vibes check, and they will bring up some of your interests. So, for example, when I was in law school interviewing for summer associate roles, at the time I was really into Barry's boot camp. And I mean, I should be more into it now than I am. But I was really into Barry's boot camp. And I want to say during OCI, I had anywhere between 5 to 10 conversations in which Barry's boot camp came up because I was interviewing for LA offices and SF offices and New York offices, and partners in those offices like Barry's boot camp. So it was such a good conversation starter. So include some interests because you're so much more than your legal work. I know that we said the vast majority of your resume should be legal work, but having a short interest section is such a good way to show that you're more than just a lawyer. You have a life, you do things, you have interests.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will just say there are a few things to avoid when you're writing an interest section. Don't use some of the overdone and vague interests. For example, traveling is a very, very common intersection interest, and it doesn't really say much about you. I think, Erica, you gave a good example. Instead of putting exercise, you listed a specific class that people can actually talk about because they've either been to one or they do it themselves. That's a great conversation piece. So instead of just writing traveling, maybe you hiked throughout Southeast Asia or you have visited all of the national parks in the US, that is a conversation starter. So I would say you should try to be a little strategic and a little bit thoughtful about what interests you are including.
Exactly. I would say another one, in addition to traveling, is food. I think that, I'm very interested in food. Becca, I know you're interested in food. Most people, I hope, have some interest in food. Make it more unique, make it more specific, because food, it's really hard for me as an interviewer to see the word food and think, okay, what specific question can I ask about this interest?
Yeah, or foodie. Like, okay, everyone calls themselves a
Exactly.
foodie.
Exactly. But if you say something along the lines of, I've tried every French restaurant in San Francisco, that's interesting. Like, which one's your favorite? Why only the French restaurants? So make it interesting. And you can do that just by making it a tad more specific to you.
Yeah. Another small section we think you should add are your admissions. So your bar admissions and your court admissions. And this is unique for lawyers, so it's not something that you might have ever added to your resume before. But if you are admitted to a state bar and any courts, you should add a section to your resume. Again, this can be a short line, or you can kind of lump it with like admissions, memberships, interests section at the bottom. And you should state the name of the state bar, and if you have a number, include your number as well. Um, and then again, if any courts, district courts, courts of appeals, you should add those as well, and that will also demonstrate your experience.
Absolutely. So, so important. And I feel like so many people don't realize that adding your state bar number is important. So, yes, add the number to the extent that you can. Number 6, your resume is a work product. I know we've kind of touched on this, but we cannot stress how important this really is. When we make a submission on your behalf or you submit your resume to a potential employer, your resume is, you can think of it as the first work product they are receiving from you. So that means you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and that it's a product that you're proud of, that you've double checked it, triple checked it, and that there's no typos or formatting issues. This should be an A+ product that reflects very well on you.
Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying, but you should triple check before you send anything off, including, if you have a cover letter or writing sample or references. Again, as Erica said, this is their first impression, so it's super important. Our final piece of advice is, and this applies to the vast majority of associates, your resume should be no longer than one page unless you have compelling reasons to include more information than not. Based on all the advice we've given already in this conversation, you should be able to keep it down to one page if you're including only the most relevant experience. And there are a few exceptions for this, which Erica will go into, but this is pretty important because it also shows that you're able to determine what is relevant, and it reflects on your ability to, when you're asked to produce work product in the job, they want to know that you're someone who can make cuts, who can deliver precise work product. And if your resume just looks like you threw every single thing that you've ever done on it, that doesn't really reflect well on your ability to make decisions and calls, which is inherent to the job of being a lawyer.
Right. So, one exception to this one page resume rule is senior level attorneys who've been practicing for over 10 years. And this also includes partners and counsel level attorneys who might have portable books of business and who've also been practicing likely for over a decade.
Yeah, at this point, you likely have speaking engagements you want to include. You have leadership positions at your firm that you should include. You might have a number of publications that are relevant. Again, these should all, if they're going to be on your resume, they should be relevant to your expertise or to the specific role that you are applying for. But obviously, the longer you practice, the more likely you are to accumulate these types of things that would obviously make your resume longer than a page.
Exactly. And folks who are at this level, you're not just coming in to a law firm to demonstrate your skills as a technical attorney. Generally, you're also coming in to demonstrate your business development skills. And that's why speaking engagements and publications are something valuable to add, because it shows how you're connecting with people in the community, and how you're making contact with clients, and how you're selling yourself, and how you would sell your potential firm. So that's why these folks tend to have longer resumes, and it's totally okay for these resumes to be longer. Another exception is if you had a long career prior to going to law school or prior to pivoting into law. And this is relevant if that career can somehow be tied into this new role that you're applying to.
Right. So, again, it's not something you should spend a lot of space on if it's not directly relevant to the new role that you're applying to, like Erica said, but it can be relevant and not legal. For example, if you were a consultant for many years, that's super valuable experience that a law firm would love to see. And that's well and good to include, but some other experiences might not be as compelling. So you should consider strongly whether or not you want to include that.
Exactly. Another example of experience that we've seen that is compelling to add is for our folks who are in IP or patent work. And if they had extensive careers as an engineer prior to becoming a lawyer, that is relevant. That shows that you have the technical skills and knowledge that would make you a better patent attorney or IP litigator. So that is definitely stuff you can add in.
Exactly. Well, that's all we have for today. Till next time, feel free to leave any comments, questions, DM us, and we'll talk soon.